All right, guys, so we got the car back lowered, and what I want to try and do now is we were playing around with the the water to air intercooler for the Supercharger once it's mounted in there. And what we wanted to do was steal the space that the original 2.7 and 2.3 air-to-air intercooler was. You can see it right here in its shroud. And so we've got we took the dimensions of this guy. It's like 17 on the core itself, like 17 by 3.5, and I forget it's like 7 inches or something like that. So we ended up finding one very close for air to water. And what we want to try and do is mount it in the same location here. Our issue is we couldn't find really a great one with a rear port, so we needed some extra space, and we might have to modify these ends right here. We got some 90 3/4 tubing to actually run the coolant through it. So that's not ideal. We might try and either weld this up in the future or find another one that has side ports that come out this way. Doesn't really matter too much right now because we have the space on it. But this one is also a little taller. And so when we go to actually try and use the isolators here, it doesn't quite fit with the distance that we have here with the stock kind of setup using an isolator mount, much like that guy has, with two studs on either end for both sides to actually mount in the isolators, and then it has a bracket that would span the top here, a steel bracket. So but we still want to try and keep that general design, as well as what we want to do is try and here's that bracket, by the way, along with that foam guard for the actual AC and normal engine radiator. So but we want to go ahead and also try and do is retain this shroud for the fan. This guy would normally sit on it, something like that. So this one is also an active shroud. We ended up removing the fins and the actual actuator from this guy, just so that we can get constant airflow, since it really always needs it. There's no reason to make this an active part now. We're going to try and keep that for the radiator, but anyway, we'll see how that works. But at least right now, this guy kind of mounts up here in front. If I can do it one-handed to show you guys. And so with that mounted in there, it gets proper directional airflow for the intercoolers that would be behind this. It's really always much better to have a shroud than just have a radiator kind of just floating in space if you can. So that's why we want to try and reuse this guy. So in order to get everything lined up with this shroud and these isolators, what we decided to do is get some flat bar steel. We got a couple of different sizes here in terms of thickness and width that we're going to try out, but we think we can pull it off with getting a kind of a bent piece similar to how the original was. We just need to go up a little bit further. And the nice part about this intercooler is we ended up bending back some of its mounting tabs. They were originally 90 degrees. We bent them back, and we're going to try and mount the steel to this. And so that will be a rigid connection, but ultimately we need this to be isolated. And so we're gonna, I think, try and keep this, these bottom original isolators. These are just like neoprene rubber kind of thing. Keep those. We might modify it a little bit or just go to some more rubber. And that will mount the bottom of the steel plate that runs across here. And then we'll probably just end up using some bolts right now for the studs that end up going through it. And that will solidify the bottom part. And the top part is this custom kind of bent up a little bit iron piece that has luckily some bolt holes from that original. You might be able to see under here. It's kind of underneath where my finger is. So we'll be able to tie in there to actually mount to the frame, and we'll go ahead and just put the isolator up here now for that piece. So we'll just either cut down this one or make something else that fits that guy. And yeah, we'll have a complete isolator for this top section and for the bottom section, with just kind of a framing mount to the sides, which is similar to how this one was. It's just basically set up now for the size and width of this one. We'll still have access to our drain port. This one actually has two, depending on what you need. I think we'll be able to use the bottom. It's just off of this guy here, and it actually moves a little bit in front. So I think all of our spacing lines up pretty well for that intercooler, and that'll be kind of the main part to mount. Once we have that, we've done some test fits with the tray, the undercarriage protector for the front tray here. And we think everything will clear with that, but we'll double check before we solidify everything. But in this space that you guys see here, there's actually quite a lot. This is where normally the intercooler tubing would run up to the turbos. So what we want to do with this space in between here and behind this intercooler is use that for the reservoir for the supercharger, as well as the pump that ultimately pushes the coolant throughout that entire system. So we think we'll have plenty of space to mount that without running into the guard that I was just talking about. So we'll be able to, once we get this intercooler in, lift it up, see how much space we have, see what kind of mount points we can make those brackets for the reservoir. Ultimately, we want to try and fill the reservoir from up here somehow. So we'll see how to run that. Yeah, that's kind of the plan right now. So we'll probably just do a time lapse for coming up with the bracket design for this intercooler and see how it works, trying to again make it as nice fit and finish and OEM like as we can. So let's see how it works out. All right guys, so here's a little bit better visual for what we're working on here. We've got the air to water, water to air intercooler mounted up about where it needs to be. We, like I said, are going to reuse this shroud from the original Bronco for its intercooler here. And right now I'm trying to just get everything in position and figure out what kind of heights I can play with my different steel flat bars that I'm going to try and use to mount to the tabs on the top and bottom here. Gives you a little bit better idea now. You can see the tabs. And they're fairly close in line with this guy. I want to use these two mount holes, which is what the original guy that held the intercooler on here used. And in that case, they I think they went, yeah, it goes up a little bit on that one as well. And so it comes off and then goes up a little bit and then mounts to the isolators, just like the bottom. We can't really pull that off here, so I think we're going to put the isolators through this guy and run the steel bar across the back, because we can't go too high because of the radiator and everything ends up clipping if we get too high. So we'll probably go below this a little bit. We'll see how I'm pretty sure we don't clip anything towards the back. I don't even think with a nut we'll clip, but I need to double check a few things like that. We will have to cut down the inlet and outlet for this a little bit, and we've got a tool to re-crimp. Luckily it's big enough diameter here. Re-crimp on that ridge for the actual hose that's going to be on here, and it's a 90 degrees, so it'll just run right out here. I think we're going to try and again plan to have our reservoir and our pump kind of situated right back over here. And that will allow us to service it if we need to, because this part kind of just is empty. The actual pan, the under tray, just is the floor of this basically. So this place will probably be, this side will be for that. And I wanted to leave this side kind of open in case we need to add something else, as well as I wanted to be able to make sure there's easy access for the oil filter here. Get this guy out of the way. So I might end up just trying to reuse the oil filter catch and drainage pan from the F-150. I was looking at it yesterday on an F-150, and it sits pretty well. I think depending on how I run this brake line cable under here, maybe I put it above it, maybe I put it below it, whichever, and I kind of reuse this part to hold that pan. And the nice part is it's you know, kind of a little reservoir, and then the spout comes off to the side here. So I should be able to get to it fairly well. We'll see how much access we have, if you can actually reach your hand in there without taking the underpan off, but otherwise it's like 4 bolts for the underpan, so it's not really a big deal to change the oil on this. Anyway, so yeah, we're kind of just taking some measurements, going slow, making sure that this thing's going to fit, that it's right up against this intake shroud, and doesn't clip with anything else, so we don't interfere it. And that's what I really like about it, is this, so much of this car we can kind of pull off exactly in the same manner that it came with from the factory, and you know, it looks the same, definitely has the same kind of appearance, and overall the same functionality, maybe just in a different way now with the V8 and the supercharger instead of a turbo and an inline 4 or a V6. So anyway, I'll go and throw it back onto the time lapse and see what we can get accomplished here on the lower bracket and upper bracket for this guy. All right guys, this is the top section I'm working on now. Put a little notch on both sides just to make sure to clear the edge of the intercooler. Still putting about a 1/4 of an inch between the actual metal and this for any kind of displacement due to the grommets we're using for isolators. So should fit pretty well. Got my centers for the 4 holes here. It's a little hard to see. And yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and drill some probably like 1/2 inch holes or so. These two are going to get a isolator on the bar side just because of some clearance issues with the radiator above it, and then these guys will be clearance for the through bolt that actually attaches this to the frame. So let's go ahead and get it done. All right, guys, so we got a mess of wires here. The F-150 harness is now pretty much completely dissected, and we've got cables and temporary looms and everything running around. Okay, so our only sign of life has been this cluster, and we've gone through a couple of iterations with taking things off and then trying it, and we had one time where we ended up accidentally cutting the one of the high-speed CAN systems. And so we reconnected that one after we started searching through our diagrams for a while, found our error, connected all of our grounds. We've got a bunch of common ground here for all of the subsystems. Once we were able to get that, we are now able to turn this guy on without any issue at all. And, of course, it just throws a bunch of errors at us because nothing's connected. We'll be dealing with all that stuff later. So now that we've got this back into a stable state, we're going to continue to cut away things that we know that we do not need, just to, again, get this loom down to the bare and make sure that we have everything that we need, that we can carry over to the Bronco to get the signals to the Bronco side and vice versa as needed. And some of that is analog, but most of that will ultimately be digital in how we are progressing with it. And so that is kind of where we're at now. So again, the dash cluster, which is this kind of subsection in front of me, there's some like 3 connectors over there. That is what we've been working on for like the last 2 days. The wiring loom over here is a combination of the interior BCM wiring loom and the under truck, in this case under vehicle, fuel control. So we've pretty much got the fuel control. That's the simplest loom. We'll detail that in a little while, and on our pinout, etc. Right now we are using the fuel pump module, which would keep the returnless fuel system. We still plan to do that. We don't have plans right now unless we have to go to a return style system, but anyway, we'll talk about that at a later time. So those 2 looms are pretty much cut. That fuel system loom is really ideal right now because it's like already cut to length based on the Bronco and everything, and we just got to deal with a canister vent connection and figure out our sender to the vehicle. In this case, it'll be the Bronco dash. So that's really all that loom's doing. The mess of wires over here with all the red and green tape, that's the BCM. And so what we need to do now is play around with the BCM and see what kind of configurations we can get it to in a minimized form. If we ultimately have to take the BCM in some portion, that's what we may have to do just to keep everything happy on the F-150 side. But we're going to attempt to try and divorce the BCM completely from the PCM. That's typically how like a hot rod kit that you would get for a Mustang would work. It just relies on the PCM as the primary computer to control everything. And that's pretty much anything we need as well, but the issue comes with certain key functions that we'll talk about. So we'll see how the BCM looks there. Obviously, we have the BCM on the Bronco. That's pretty much non-negotiable. It works on a bunch of stuff, and so we'll see how that integrates. The harness over here, this is one of the side harnesses that actually attaches to the Coyote motor that does AC and alternator, and the actual power junction box, which you see up here, is the primary power, along with the sensors and the actual cables for the battery. This one's pretty much already as we need. We may just change the lengths on the positive and negative terminal, as well as we'll see what we end up doing with the actual battery junction box here. We'd like to integrate it all into one system, whether that's in the Bronco box or separate, and we'll have a smaller fuse box just for F-150 PCM function. We're still figuring that out. So this harness is pretty much all set, and then we go to the vehicle harness. So this vehicle harness is the most integrated one that we have to work on. It is controlling basically all of the operations in the engine bay that either the PCM or the BCM needs to deal with. And so things like the radiator fans, ABS module, headlights, sensors, things like that, all going to going through this system, it has to directly tie in on analog and digital to the Bronco harness over there. So there's going to be a lot of integration with this guy and the Bronco harness, since we still need a lot of the same connectors, a lot of the same functions that we see in the Bronco that the F-150 harness can't deal with. So this one's going to get stripped down next. We'll probably be spending several days on this guy, getting it to that point, and then at some point we're going to have to rip off the Bronco harness, get it over here, and find its equivalent lines and see what can be tied into, what kind of connectors need to be transferred, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that is kind of the plan here. Obviously, this is a lot of work. There's a lot of different connections, but once you kind of wrap your head around all the different functions, it really isn't as intimidating as it looks, I will say. There's just a lot of either redundant lines or lines tied into each other that are parallel. So, at the end of the day, it's the basic functions, especially with a swap, as simple as just the engine side and interfaces to the vehicle. It's not as difficult. The other issue, though, is the software side. So understanding the CAN IDs and what those directly mean in between the two systems, that's where it can get tricky. So we got a few plans there to be able to help catalog and pull up IDs and ultimately be able to change what those IDs send or receive on either side is what we're going to have to do. So, but primarily on the F-150, because we know it's unlocked and so forth, whereas the Bronco is a little bit harder on that side. So anyway, that is the plan. We are going to call it an episode for today and move on to that next wiring harness in the next episode. We'll probably have a pinout for a lot of this stuff at a future time. See how ultimately these electrical integrations and the taping of this and presentation of it works. Well, we've floated around a couple ideas with how to do it, but at least right now we're kind of keeping it mostly in our heads and working alone on it. We'll probably have one big episode where we kind of overview things if that's how we decide to do it. So anyway, so that is the plan. We will catch you guys later. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Get some notifications when we are done with this wonderful, wonderful project. So catch you guys.